Hello, good morning. I'm out today in a very windy and potentially stormy South Devon coastline. My intention today is to share with you some of my top tips for shooting really good sort of seascapes and landscapes along the coast. Now, I'm not 100% sure what we're going to get today. I knew when I came out early I wasn't going to be getting fantastic light and fantastic sunrise, but I came up early anyway because we have a narrow window of opportunity, I believe, to get this photography done. Although above me right now we have blue sky, and I think the cloud's going to clear, so you never quite know what's going to happen. The day may turn out different than I expected, but at the moment we've got some great clouds in the background, so I want to crack on and try and capture those as soon as I can, although things are moving on fast. So let's not hang around, let's crack on, get some photography done. So here we are, this is what we've come to shoot this morning. Start Point Lighthouse. As you can see, the light's just coming up behind me and it's starting to sort of just come up above those clouds, and it's going to be right in our face, which is going to give us some very strange lighting conditions, which I'm going to probably struggle with managing, to be honest. But anyway, we're going to give it a go, because what we're here to talk about really is composition tips and giving you guys lots of different ideas on how you can turn boring seascapes into some really quite spectacular images. And there's a number of common problems which you get with seascape photography. One is the most obvious one is that you've got all the sea on the left or the right, and vice versa with the land. So you get this like 50-50 split, and sometimes that leads to a lot of empty space. There's a lot of sky in a lot of seascape pictures, and sometimes the sky is not that interesting. So we're going to talk about how we can deal with that, and also talk about the vast sort of empty areas of water and sea that's in front of us as well. So let's set up the camera and see what we can do. Things aren't working out exactly how I wanted, because I'm actually shooting directly into the sun, which I shouldn't be. I should be shooting into a cloud bank, giving me some nice texture behind the lighthouse, but the weather very rarely actually does what it's supposed to do. So we've got an added problem. So the first images I'm going to put up and show you will probably be grossly exposed incorrectly, and I'll sort those out later on, but it gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So the first tip, really what I want to talk about is don't include too much sea. And that sounds a bit crazy when you're shooting the seascapes, but the sea is very open and blank and empty, and by including too much of it you can actually end up diluting the power of your photograph. And what I basically mean by that is you end up with a small strip of land on one side and all the sea on the other side. And what that tends to do is it just doesn't give anything for the eye to settle on, and quite often your eye just follows the land and drifts off into that big empty space, and there's nothing there for us to look at. So there's a few ways to combat that, and we're going to include those in the final composition of this picture. The second tip is it's very easy for people to stand at the coastline, look out to sea, hold the camera up or put it on the tripod, and what we tend to do is put the horizon in the middle. And that's not a really good idea. We can use the rule of thirds to help us with that. If we put the horizon on the third, either the lower third or the top third, then we get a much more dynamic and pleasing composition. And you might want to do that depending on what the day's like. For example, the weather today, there's nothing really going on in the sky. Everything's happening down on the sea. So I'm going to include more sea in this picture. So that's the first thing. So let's put this composition into play, and I'm going to I will sort out the exposure, honestly, and then what we'll do is I'll show you the final picture. I took days to edit this photo. I kept going back to it. In the end, the edit turned out to be simple. I learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes less is more. I stopped fighting with the lighting, stopped trying to make the image something it isn't, and accept what I was dealt with, working with the natural beauty of the coast the best way I can. I think the photograph demonstrates how using the land to lead you through the picture to a lighthouse and horizon on intersecting thirds creates a pleasing composition. Wow. As you can see, it's blown up quite a bit, which is actually working in my favour because I needed some of this cloud cover to come in. I was actually going to give up on the shoot. I don't even know if I'm going to be showing you the last photograph because I struggled so badly trying to control the really contrasty lighting conditions. I didn't actually think I was going to be able to take these pictures. But I've moved again, I've come down to another position. I hope you can hear me. It's very, very windy and everything's blowing about, but I'm doing my best. So I've come a little bit further down the coastline a little bit and lower down as well. And the reason for that, I wanted to get a different angle on the lighthouse, but it also gives me the opportunity to talk to you about how to get rid of all that sort of sea that's right in front of you and get some more interest back into the picture. Now ideally I'd like to get a little bit lower, a little bit more interest in it, but what I've actually got in front of me, and I'll put it up on the screen for you so you can see the composition through the viewfinder, is a rock down the bottom left. And that rock is really quite good because it's quite light as well. So not only does it add foreground interest, which is the next tip, is to add some foreground interest, it also balances a little bit with what's going to be quite a light background, I think, because of the contrasty lighting conditions. So it's working on two levels. Like I say, the sky has clouded over a bit. The clouds are moving in. We are forecasted to have some quite bad storms coming in here, and that's also given me some nice big waves as well in the foreground. So I haven't taken the camera down really low to the ground. I've kept it a little bit higher, and the reason I've done that is on this edge that I'm looking at of the cliff, there's a little bit of thrift along there and flowers, and also we got some nice white water around some rocks down the bottom. And what I'm hoping to do is to bring out those greens in there as well, because you get that, don't you? You know, when you get some stormy sort of conditions and some stuff rolling in from the sea, that sea gets that green colour sometimes in it, and I want to try and capture that as well. So I'm going to take these pictures, and I think I've got probably one more picture after this that I want to attempt to take in a slightly different location, but we're just going to have to see how that works out. I was hoping to do a little bit of slow shutter speed work and put that in as well, but it's so windy, I can feel the vibration through the camera of the wind. So I'm going to take these pictures. I am shooting at a reason. I'll tell you what my settings are actually. So yeah, so we're shooting at f11, 50th of a second, sorry, 80th of a second, as a middle exposure. So to be honest, that's why I'm not using my cable release. As soon as I get reasonable shutter speeds, I'm not bothering. The tripod's here today so that I can concentrate on my focusing and my composition. I'm not worried about camera shake at all. Of course, if I want to do some slow shutter speed work later on, I'm going to have to slow that down a lot. Okay, so one more picture to take, because I always bracket f11, 40th of a second. I'll put the settings up on the screen of the final ones when I put them up. So it's time to pack up from here. I'm going to move on to my next photograph, and the wind's coming from behind me, so I'm hoping when I drop down I'm going to be out of the wind a little bit more, and I can do some slow shutter speed work, but we'll just have to see what happens. Right, a couple more for luck, I think.
As the morning progressed, the lighting and conditions continued to challenge me, but at least when editing, I knew how to handle these photographs. Don't wrestle with the conditions, work with them. This photograph pleases me the more I look at it. The light-coloured rock in the foreground helps to balance the sun burning through the cloud. The turbulent sea, greens and waves breaking on the rocks help to convey the weather conditions.
So I'm already taking pictures of this scene. It's really quite windy still, and I didn't have time to set everything up because the light was changing so quickly and film this for you. But hopefully you can see what I'm doing now. What I will do is I will take some film through here in a minute, and some video footage, and put that up on the screen so you can see what it is that I'm looking at. Now I've taken a couple of different compositions here, but I'm going to talk about this one in particular, which I'm working on, because as landscape photographers, we normally think about taking landscape pictures or seascape pictures. Landscape is also a format. It's when the camera is in its horizontal, pretty much like the film that you're watching now. But you can also shoot with the camera vertically, like I've put it here. And by shooting vertically, it gives you a whole different aspect on the thing. And it's interesting we mentioned aspect, because I also want to talk about aspect ratio. Sometimes when you're shooting with the camera in the vertical format, things get a little bit too narrow, a little bit too thin, and I think sometimes your pictures then lose a little bit of strength and substance to them. But by cropping a little bit off the top and a little bit off the bottom and changing the aspect ratio that you're shooting at, you add that strength and that depth back into the frame. So normally when we're shooting in this way, we're shooting in a 2:3 aspect ratio. So we're shooting, say, 2 centimeters along by 3 centimeters up, or whatever dimension your sensor is. When you change the aspect ratio, for example, it could be a square, a 1:1, which I might try in a minute. And if I do, I'll put those pictures right at the end for you. And also you can shoot 5:4 as I am here. Like I said, I've taken a number of different compositions, but as I was looking through the viewfinder, I found out and kind of realised that my centre of interest was some rocks down here, not exactly in the foreground, but sort of the middle distance. So I've zoomed in as well. I'm in at about 85 millimeters, and by zooming in and closing in on the centre of interest and the detail, we're getting those nice stormy seas and the rocks, and we've got the lighthouse in the background. There's a little bit of light sometimes lighting up the edges of the cliff, so I'm really quite enjoying it. I'm doing some slow shutter speed work in a minute as well. I am a little bit more sheltered here, so I'm going to try those and I'll have a look at that. But I'll put up the picture that I've taken now, and then we'll do some slow shutter speed work quickly.
By the time I took this photograph, it had gotten a little late in the morning for photography. Contrasty direct sunlight forced its way through the cloud. Storm clouds rolled in behind the lighthouse, but the 5:4 vertical crop works well and makes the best use of the coastline.
So since we're talking about composition today in seascapes, I thought I would finish off with a square picture. Now, traditionally people tend to take pictures in either portrait or landscape, but I really do enjoy the square format as well. I think it goes back to my early days of photography and being inspired by people using square format, medium format cameras. And it's great to be able to pick all these different aspect ratios in your SLR. And if you can't do it in your camera, then you can crop them when you get the pictures back in the computer anyway at home. So if you're going to do that, you just need to think square when you're looking through the viewfinder, and remember that you're going to take some bits off either side. But the reason I like using the square picture, or square format should I say, is that obviously when you cut those sides off, you lose some of the distracting elements. So often with seascape photography, like I said earlier today, where you end up with either too much land on one side or too much sea trailing off into the distance and no interest there, the square helps you take care of that. You can cut those edges off which peter off into the distance and mean nothing. And that's what I've done here. So I've gone in nice and close on the detail, similar to we did with the 5:4 picture that you've just seen. But I've gone in this time and taken some of the bottom off, some of the side, and really zoomed in on that centre of interest. I also said I was going to do a bit of slow shutter speed work. So I've loaded the front of the camera up with a 6-stop ND, a polarizer, and a 3-stop ND as well, which is sort of given me about 11-12 stops of neutral density filter on the front of the lens. So I've been able to shoot at shutter speeds of between about 8 down to about 2 or 3 seconds, because I'm bracketing heavily because of the high contrast. So I'm going to blend those exposures together to get the best that I can. So I hope you enjoy this picture.
I wanted to show you how a square photograph could drive all the wasted space and distracting features from the frame. On that level it works, but it may well be my least favourite of the day. It was so bright I could only manage a 3-second exposure. I think another trip with softer lighting, maybe during the blue hour, with an exposure measured in minutes, may just yield what I want. When I go back, I will take you with me.
All it leaves for me to say is thank you very much for watching today's video. If you made it right to the end, I do apologise for the video jumping around in bits and pieces and the wind noise as well. But this is what landscape photography is about. It's about getting out there and enjoying yourselves. Enjoy your photography, get creative with your composition work. And if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like, please subscribe, it really helps the channel. As always, questions, comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.